Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome to Sheffield Primary Care Commissioning Committee, and we are live streaming the meeting. We still have a couple of people to join us, which they should do in a few minutes or by 2 o'clock. First of all, I'd like to give apologies. Ronnie, I don't know if you would like to do this. I think we've got apologies from Brian Hughes, from Leslie Smith in terms of the voting members, and from Alan Windell, but Danny Heights is joining us instead of Alan. I'd also like to welcome Keith. He's had a couple of problems joining us. Are you there at the moment? I can see your face and you're moving a bit, so that's good. Keith is joining us from, he's a senior primary care manager and works for NHS England, NHS Improvement, and it's part of his induction. So I hope you find it useful today and the discussions. Okay, so if we go then to the agenda, have we got any declarations of interest from the members today for any of the items? Abby's shaking her head, so I don't think we have, but if we, while we're in discussion and you feel that it's becoming a conflict of interest, please draw my attention to it so that we can record it. And the next item then is the approval of the minutes. So if I can get any changes so we can approve them. So any amendments or changes to page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8. No, so if we can note as being approved, Ronnie, and go on to the matters arising. First of all, taking the ones in the tables attached. So the first item there is about the budgets, and that's an open matter. And I don't know if Jackie's joined us yet, but we have got an agenda item, haven't we, about the finance? But, so that one's keeping open. The next item is for closure. Abby, would you like to say anything about the Opal?
Thank you. Very briefly, yes, I'm pleased to say that we have now moved along in our plans, and the proposal is due to be launched very shortly, and we've secured LMC support for the approach we're taking, which is referenced in one of the items being brought to the committee when they meet in private later on this afternoon. And we will, once reporting is operational, we'll report to Pccc on the progress of that reporting and what it's indicating.
Okay, the next one is about financial reports, and including the workforce report is recommended for closure. So it's got your name next to that as well.
Yes, this was around us including some information on the ARRS roles in the workforce reporting that we're doing on a quarterly basis as part of the primary care update report that's presented to the committee, and we agreed we'd do that quarterly, and some information on the ARRS roles in post has been included in this month's report. And as we progress, we will add further information to that around the number of roles that are carrying vacancies and PCN's plans for the coming year. So that will continue to evolve.
Thank you. So the next item, which is a local GP retention plan, I understand it's been included as part of the primary care report on this agenda?
It's included as part of a paper that's been tabled today, so I'll provide members with further information in private about the plans and progress on that.
Okay, so that today and is recommended for closure at this point. Process for self-assessment, which we've completed and is on the agenda, so that's recommended for closure. The link was sent. Thank you for those that completed it. So that's recommended for closure. There's some, I think the other items are relating to the self-assessment report, which we're required to do as an audit process. And that actually is the next item. But before I do that, are there any other matters arising that are not on the actions or the ones already covered? No? Okay, thank you. So if we move on to the self-assessment report, and Abby's going to talk to this.
Yes, thanks very much, Chris. So members will recall in November, we brought a paper describing what the committee was required to do in terms of self-assessment. And the proposal at that point, which was supported by the committee, was the self-assessment would be in two parts. The first was the review of the operation of the committee meetings, which you will recall had already been undertaken, and we shared the results of that as they were presented to Audit and Integrated Governance Committee. And I think members supported the evidence and the information that the chair had provided on behalf of the committee, and considered that review was consistent with their understanding and experience. The second part was the members' self-assessment, and we provided a proposed questionnaire that members would be asked to fill in. There was a time period for members to submit any comments or suggested amendments, apart from an amendment around a typo. We received no further amendments, and therefore the questionnaire was circulated electronically for completion by voting members, non-voting members, and those in regular attendance at the committee, with the request that it was completed by the end of December. In total, we circulated the request to 18 people. We had 7 responses, which is a response rate of around 39%. And we completed some analysis of those responses. We only received 1 verbatim comment, which is included at the end of the report in the summary. So we did some brief analysis. I think there's a couple of things worth saying, that the assessment covers a longer period, because we're covering an 18-month period here, and that in terms of the analysis and recommendations from this, we try to extract general learning or things that would be helpful going forward, mindful that the committee in its current format, we don't know the future of the committee in its current format as we transition to the ICB. I think we know now that the committee will exist into Q1 of next year, but beyond that, we're still waiting clarification. So the key sort of messages or matters for learning that we extracted are more general than they might be if we were planning for a further full year of PCC meetings in their PCCC meetings in their current format. So I think it's worth noting that overall the results were encouraging. The lowest score that was received for any question was 6 out of 10, and that was about whether the meetings allow sufficient time for discussion of substantive matters. And with the exception of that one score, all the other scores were consistently at 7 or above, which I think overall is encouraging for the operation of the committee. You can see the sort of detailed breakdown of that in the appendix. In terms of the key learning, I think one of the points was around being mindful of the time that's taken to deal with the business that's required of PCCC or its successor organisation, and making sure that the committee or its successor has sufficient time to consider matters appropriately. Also notable, I think, were around taking the time at the start to ensure the relationship between key committees was established, well understood and effective. And finally, that I think development sessions remain important to make sure committee members are informed and educated and able to discharge their duties appropriately. So I don't know if there are any questions or comments.
Abby, I've just realised I've been remiss as chair and not asked people to say who they are and their job title. If you can say that.
I'm Abby Tubbs. I'm Deputy Director of Primary Care for the CCG.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this survey? Well, just to reiterate what Abby said, not all of it, but the positive points and feedback, you know, I'm very pleased that the people that responded, and also it is, we have got not that many months left. However, the learning from this and the learning from how we've conducted this governance with regard to primary care will stand us in good stead for the new structures in the ICS, including some of the feedback from here. So thank you for that. So moving on then to the next item, which is the primary care annual report. And is Joanne speaking to this?
I'm going to speak to this, Chris. Thank you. So I would like, as I start this, just to note that and extend my thanks to Jo Ward within my primary care team, and to Ronnie Foster-Ash for doing a significant amount of work to prepare this report, and also to those who contributed information to it as well. The report covers an extended period. Normally, as the title would suggest, it's an annual report. Due to COVID, our last report was delayed, and therefore we agreed that this report would cover an 18-month period from April 2020 to up to November 2021. And then we would probably envisage a further final report covering the last 6 months of the 6-7 months of the life of the of PCCC. Pre-transition to the ICB, if that happens, if that goes ahead as currently scheduled. I don't propose to go into a great deal of detail, other than I think that the report covers both the business of the committee and also the work that's happened in primary care. And I hope what's clear from this is the significant amount of work that's been undertaken within primary care by our GP providers and colleagues during the pandemic, in order to support our management of that, but also in trying to deliver business as usual as well. And also the significant amount of work undertaken by the primary care team, PCCC, and staff in the CCG to support primary care in achieving that. And that's all I really want to say at this point. I throw it open if there's any questions or comments from the committee.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee? I think some of the areas we have been really significant. I won't start with COVID, but the primary care estates, which certainly I've spent quite a bit of time on looking at the plans and the proposals, and we're pleased that the finance release has been approved, and we'll be looking at it in more detail. But that's got, it is a huge asset for Sheffield, that we're getting this investment in terms of capital and improvements to existing estates as well as new build. I have thanked people in the start of the report, because I just think it's so exceptional, the work that's carried out through COVID, not least the vaccination. And, you know, it was all hands to the pump before Christmas, and huge figures, which are not in my head at the moment, that's made Sheffield much safer and protecting people's health. And also we know some of the issues in terms of the workforce and managing this, but also the innovation in the physician associates and other areas of work to try and increase this capacity. So I can only say thank you again, and both to our wider primary care teams, but also to the team in the CCG that lead on this work. Amir, you've got your hand up.
I have, Chris, thank you. I'm Amir Afzal, I'm a local GP and I sit on the governing board of the CCG. I mean, firstly, compliments to the authors of the report. It is a very comprehensive report, and I did actually read most of it. The thing that occurs to me, Chair, and perhaps this is for you, is there's been a lot of work that's gone into this and a lot of intelligence gained. And also, I think some useful links made between frontline primary care and our commissioners. Is there a way of ensuring that most of this work is not lost in the brave new world come the 1st of July, and somehow to keep this within place?
Well, I certainly share your view about that. I don't know if Jackie wants to say something, or Sandy, about how we might do that. I think we certainly developed over the time of this committee and the learning and the engagement. Jackie, were you going to speak and I interrupted you after asking you?
Sorry, I missed the context because I've only just joined the call, so apologies.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We've just been looking at the primary care report, and I was just commenting on the amazing work, not least COVID, but the success so far with the estates proposals, and also managing the workforce and the pressures on primary care. And Amir was saying, how can we make sure that, you know, that learning and that good practice and the quality of that gets carried on into the ICS structure. I think another thing in the report, it points out that we didn't have to do some of the quality work, CQC's working on that, but our quality committee did that, and we were just at the point of developing even better links with that committee. So it was just about trying, you know, how can we build on it, take the learning over, not be starting from a position, a different, you know, a position that is further back than this, really.
And I think the important thing to remember is obviously staff currently within the CCG who'll transfer to the ICB will retain that level of history and understanding. We've done work previously with the governing body around the important things as a legacy of Sheffield CCG and what we want to carry forward into the ICB. So the ICB won't be something that just, you know, starts again from scratch. It will build on a lot of the work that's already happened. There is a strong push for having strong places within the ICB, and you know, the place is grounded in our practices, in our primary care networks and in our organisations in Sheffield. So I think we should take comfort that a lot of that will be maintained. And I think that the onus is on us as we have discussions with new people coming within the ICB about celebrating what's gone well and what we feel the opportunities are.
Yes, thanks, Jackie. I'm sure we will endeavour to do that. And as you say, a lot of key people will be moving across. I think the other thing that is about the partnerships and the engagement of the community in this work, and especially through COVID when that was really difficult. You know, so the work with the LMC, the development sessions that we've had as well. So it's good to have it in a document, and certainly that will help to take it forward. Mark, you've got your hand up. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mark Gamsu. I'm a lay member on the Clinical Commissioning Group, and I'm the Deputy Chair for this committee. I mean, the only thing I'd say is as I understand it, we're expecting a further discussion at governing body in a couple of months' time, starting to think about the place-based arrangements that we're seeking to establish in the city. And I'm sure that as part of that, we're going to be looking at how we build on the practice that we've had and the relationships that we've had here. So as well as the individuals going through, we're expecting those proposals to come through. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Sandy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, so I'm Sandy Buck and I'm Director of Commission and Development for the CCG, and just to affirm what everyone's saying, I think this paper really outlines everything that we've been doing, all the positives and strengths, especially during the pandemic, has shown across organisations, across primary care, and we really want to take that learning and those strong relationships and use this as an opportunity to strengthen them and actually ensure that whatever the transition puts in place, that actually Team Sheffield is actually in a very positive, strong place with primary care and primary care networks at the forefront of the decisions within primary care. So it really is building on it rather than starting from scratch, but it's really good to highlight that at this stage, that's what we're working to.
Thanks, Sandy. That's really useful. And I certainly know that there is a commitment to do that. So I think, you know, that will happen. It's in the interests of all this work, really, and Sheffield population to do that. So I'm just looking for the recommendation was that we're asked to approve the annual report of the committee's business, which we will do from your comments. Okay, so the next item then is about the relocation of Shoreham Street Surgery to the New Era Square development. So Abby, do you want to talk to this?
Thank you very much. I'm just going to give a very brief introduction, and then I'm going to hand it over to Louise, who will provide some more of the background and detail. It's also worth noting that we have in attendance at the meeting a number of colleagues from the practice who are here to hear the discussion, and will be able to provide any additional information if the committee requires it. Some time ago, I think early in 2018, the committee received approved a proposal in principle that allowed Shoreham Street Surgery to proceed with discussions to look at moving their site to the New Era Square development that was then underway. I think it's fair to say that there have been a number of delays, some due to COVID, some due to other issues that were encountered around how the transition could happen and be funded. But I'm pleased to say that we're now in a position where we're bringing a formal proposal to Pccc to seek your approval for the relocation to the New Era Square development. Louise, would you like to provide some more of the background and the detail of what's being proposed now?
Yeah, thank you. Louise Robinson, Primary Care Estates and Contracts Lead in the CCG Primary Care team. As Abby said, we've got a couple of attendees on today from the practice and also one medical group who will be the third party developer working and leading on the project. In terms of the paper that was circulated, hopefully it gave an update as to what's happened over the last couple of years. As Abby says, a paper came to receive approval in principle for continuation of discussions to happen. There was some actions that came out of that meeting which were included in the paper, and an update on those actions for ease. We've been working with the practice, and more recently this year with one medical group, last year, one medical group, to try and understand how the relocation would be suitable and workable in terms of the fit out cost, which was one of the issues that was stopping this scheme progressing, as well as other concerns, I think. So the patient consultation was undertaken at the end of last year and early January, and it went to speak this week and was given assurance of the outcome by the committee. And because it was only Tuesday this week, I haven't received any formal actions out of that meeting, but I have received a verbal update that the committee assured the report and the outcome of the consultation. And we will be working with the practice in terms of any actions that came out of that meeting and anything following this meeting. I think in terms of the update paper and the way forward, it's looking at the committee to see if there's any additional actions that we may need to take. We are having discussions with the district valuer in terms of the design, which was originally a concern from his side of things, and we've now sent forward a further design plan, which one medical group have led. And there's, as I said, there's a meeting next week with the district valuer to talk about any concerns he's got and the proposed draft heads of terms that will be put in place with one medical group and the practice. So if there's any questions or concerns or comments on the paper, I'll put that to the committee. And then, as I say, we have got colleagues from both one medical group and the practice on the call.
Thank you, Louise. I've got Mark, Judy and Trish. I don't know if it was Judy or Mark who had their hand up first.
It was me.
Right, carry on, Mark.
Yeah, I'm just to quickly just affirm what Louise is saying. We had Dr. Basu and Lisa Ripley come to the Strategic Patient Involvement Experience and Equality Committee earlier this week, and they've been working closely with our comms and engagement team and with Richard Kennedy in particular, and we were happy to prove the recommendations that came to us with regard to the effectiveness of the consultation that the practice has led with our support.
Thank you, Mark. Judy?
Yeah, it was just if there was still the opportunity to perhaps utilise some of the learning that we found from the different ways of working due to the pandemic. I noted in the paper that some of the comments from the patients and the consultation was around online access and those ease of services. And I just wondered whether, you know, there's more that perhaps at this stage could be done to utilise that.
I don't know if you want to answer that.
Sorry.
Thanks, Judy. I didn't remind you. Is that possible? I don't know, Abby?
Were you talking sort of generally, Judy, or in relation to Shoreham Street and this proposal?
I think more generally, but it's probably an ideal opportunity with you saying, Louise, that you kind of at the stage of still looking at the environment, what that might look like. Some of the things that we know have really worked quite well and taken things forward many years due to the pandemic.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there is a big piece of work that we need to start and complete, which we probably which we haven't begun yet, in part because of the sort of pressures on primary care, to distill the learning from the pandemic. Because you're right, while it has accelerated hugely a number of changes that were happening in primary care, but very slowly, and sort of the wholesale adoption by practices and by some groups of patients of alternative ways of contacting the GP have moved things on massively, and we do need to we need to extract all the learning we can from that, both in terms of what works and what doesn't work for future proposals, but also in how we can capitalise on that. At the same time, striking that balance, being mindful of how it's adversely affected or potentially adversely affected some other groups, and what we can learn from that when we're planning change in the future. And I think some of that's reflected maybe in some of the plans for the transformational hub developments that we're looking at, both in terms of what the right size of primary care facilities is going forward, but also what we can do to help meet the needs of people who struggle with digital access or don't have ready access to those type of facilities, not just in primary care, but how we can support them access other services as well. So I agree, and we will need to do that and extract all the learning we can from it, I think.
Okay, thank you. Trish, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Trish Edney. I'm the Health Watch representative on this committee. Now, I just say that obviously the patient consultation has been pretty thorough, and congratulations on that. But I just wonder about your response to the consultation, in the fact that one of the most common problems raised with it was about future of parking and access. It really would be interesting to know what progress there is, and is there going to be parking for patients? And purely out of interest, we've never heard whether this building is on the ground floor or on 2 floors or up 3 floors and a lift. Are patients going to be expected to climb stairs to get to the practice? I know there must be a lift if that's the case. It would just have been interesting to know, because the development is quite a large blocks of buildings rather than individual practices, practice-sized buildings as we're used to with most practices. But that's purely just out of interest. The really important thing is, what is the response to the consultation about parking?
Louise, did you want to answer that? You still
yes, there? Sorry, yeah, I am, sorry. Yes, I think originally when this obviously came a few years ago, the landlord, or well, the developer hadn't done anything in terms of the car park that has been built underneath the facility. Obviously, however, since that development has had other companies work out of there, my understanding is the car park has been leased to, I always get it wrong, Pccc, who I've contacted to see if there would be any dedicated parking, or if there'd be any, in terms of if it's a pay and display car park, whether there'd be any concession for GP attendees. I've not heard back from them as of yet. There is access parking on the side street, and my understanding is this is on the ground floor, so it's the same level as just it's out of on the corner, so it's straight off both Bramall Lane and kind of the side street. So yeah, so there shouldn't be any issues unless you were obviously coming up from the car park.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Amir?
Yeah, I mean, my main point really was going to be what Trish has already asked.
All right.
It's not really clear, but just generally, again, it was a very thorough feedback from the patient consultation. And to some extent, there, as always happens in primary care, there will be people leaving and there will be people joining to a small, to some extent or other. And I think that will just balance itself out. It's a natural way. It's when partners leave, a similar kind of process happens. On a wider point, I mean, the one thing that we need to kind of bear in mind, thinking about the other developments and the bigger developments, etc. The heart of general practice, traditional general practice, was very much within the community. And you can see that from the responses from some of the patients in this consultation. So it's inevitable that the bigger we get, the larger the circumference is going to be from patients attending those surgeries. That was just a comment. I don't expect an answer.
Yeah, okay, I was just checking, Amir. So, Jackie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jackie Mills. I'm Director of Finance at Sheffield CCG. Mine's not a query, it's just a comment on where we've got to, because obviously this committee approved in principle for this relocation to happen, subject to the clarifications that Louise and Abby have set out in the paper. I think I just wanted to give the assurance from my perspective, given all the hard work that the practice have done with the developer and the support from One Medical, I feel we're in a really good position now to move. And as Louise has noted, it's taken some time for us to get here, lots of impact of the pandemic and some quite tricky hurdles to get over, which I think were there. So I just really want to reassure the committee, subject to, as the paper says, just some final checks on the proposal and the value for money tests. I'm really confident that we can move fairly quickly and bring this to a conclusion.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just something I didn't mention, and I know I think Lisa might want to come back on this, but one of the other things that we talked about at Speak was that the importance of continuing to be in touch with patients following the move in order to just pick up and sense check. And I say we talked about it because both Dr. Basu and Lisa were fine with that, but I'm mentioning it here because I think there's a general issue which doesn't by any means just apply to this practice, which is how we can continue to support the strengthening of patient voice just as a matter of course and continue to get that sense check. I would say, as I say, that Lisa was was perfectly happy with that and supportive of that suggestion.
Would any of the practice staff like to comment on that point about connection afterwards?
Yep, so we had a discussion for this meeting with the One Medical team regarding keeping our patient population in the know, really, as to further prospective developments, as to how things are going, what things are going to look like, artist impressions, further facilities, having an online type portal for these sorts of things. Also following up from what Mark was saying in the Speak meeting, we were looking at how our more sort of vulnerable or less IT literate groups, how we could contact them through phone or other ways of doing so. So yeah, we have taken this on board, and we are moving forwards with this.
That's great. Does anyone from the practice want to comment on how it's been in the process, especially interested in the engagement and how that might have helped you with the planning?
Yeah, I can pick that up. It's Lisa Ripley, Practice Director from the practice. We got a really good engagement at this time around. Text messages were sent to all our patients, as it says in the paper. We had 254 that were failed to send. And we followed those up by paper. We obviously demonstrated our proposal on websites, various leaflets, the counsellors around the neighbourhood, 6 from Nether Edge, there were 3 from Nether Edge and 3 from another area who I have actually had contact with. We've had a lot of engagements with patients, and we have, as a practice, made one of our priorities that we go back to the patients who took the time and effort to engage with us, to give us their views, to actually feed back to them what the next steps are. I mean, the whole point of us doing this is for our patients. And if I may just pick up on a couple of things that have been said previously, regards the IT and the online consultations, etc. Again, that is something that we have sat around a table at, and it is something, again, that's going to be, you know, up there with our priorities. Our main purpose for doing this is to give our current patients a better experience. However, you know, this isn't about us getting, you know, new patients onto our list necessarily. I mean, one would think that would come with it anyway, but we did try and make it very, very clear to our existing patients, but that this was about improving their service and their experience coming through our doors. I too have contacted the Council Highways regards the parking. We've got 2 disabled parking spaces on Sheldon Street, which is directly at the side of the medical unit, and there is another 3 disabled spaces, again commissioned by the council, but they are at the entrance to the ground car park, which is a general car park. It's payable per hour, but again, like Louise said, I'm trying to negotiate, you know, to have a set number of spaces, but I am waiting for some feedback on that.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. I noticed you had your hand up before. Have you covered the things that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, I think I have. I'm just a little conscious at the moment because I'm actually in bed and I'm trying to press the right buttons without anyone seeing me.
Are you ill then?
I had a knee replacement earlier on, on Thursday last week, so I'm actually off sick at the moment.
Well, thank you for joining us. I don't know if we should encourage it, but we appreciate it.
No, I think we've gone so far with this, you know, it means a lot to the practice, and you know, I wanted to be part of this, although I might be slurring my words at the moment, but please don't think I've took to dinner time drinking.
You haven't been partying. Okay, so I haven't got any other hands up. Oh, is it Victoria?
Sorry, I'm not able to use the raising hand function. I suppose it was just an observation, really. I suppose recognising, you know, all the work that's been described. I suppose it was just a bit of an observation or a question that actually, you know, the further discussion and advice from the district valuer is quite fundamental to a premises relocation. And I suppose when reading the paper, I just wondered if it's actually at the point of being able to seek agreement of the committee without having finished those discussions and sought that advice from the district valuer, because the discussions around the design of the building and the value for money assessment are really key, not to take away in any way from the patient consultation and all the other things described. I just wondered if it's actually at the point yet of being able to seek agreement, to be honest, because they're quite fundamental, like I say. Okay, Jackie's got her hand up to presumably respond.
Yeah, so as I said in my comment, this committee has previously given approval for this, subject to a cost not to be exceeded. Some of the barriers to us progressing has been about that value for money test. So the proposal we've got in the paper is that this committee approve it subject to giving me authority to just do that final value for money test. So I suppose the question Victoria's posing is whether you feel comfortable to delegate that to me, or whether you want this decision to come back to this committee, given that we've already approved this in principle.
Well, seeing as that's the outstanding area, I would delegate to you that you know, if that's been sorted out, it can be approved. I don't know if there is a different view on the committee. I can see that it needs to be looked at and it's a key issue. So, but I think you know, I'll rely on your judgment, Jackie.
Well, and just to be clear, because obviously we seek the district value is the gives us the advice on what is a value for money test, so we would use his advice. So as if there was anything that we would be proposing that would be counter to the district valuer's advice, of course we would bring this back to this committee. If we get to a stage that the district valuer is happy with the proposals, I'm happy it delivers a value for money test, and it's within the not to be exceeded envelope already approved by this committee, I think I feel comfortable that we can proceed without coming back to the committee.
Okay, Jackie, Louise has got her hand up.
Yeah, just it was only to add on to that really, that obviously when we'd come to the committee back in 2018, the practice were working directly with the developer who isn't experienced in healthcare or medical settings, whereas One Medical Group, who have now taken on leading the project and supporting the practice, they run the walk-in centre at Sheffield. They have a lot more involvement with the district valuer and are better placed in terms of value for money, I would say. That's just as an add-on, really.
Okay, yes, I did know that we changed the contractor, but yeah, that does make a difference. People got experience working in the NHS. So if we can approve it subject to our latter discussion about the valuer, and if needs be, to bring it back again if there is some other issues in relation to that. Okay, so if we can move on to the next item, which is the...
Thank you.
Sorry, yes, and
thank you.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of the public meeting, but thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
And thank you. Thank you to you and Louise, Richard, everybody. You've all been very supportive.
Thanks very much. So can I welcome Zach as well, who's joined us?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Sorry for being late. I had another meeting.
No, that's okay. So the next item is the financial report at month 9, and is that you want to speak to that, Jackie?
Well, yeah, I'll just quickly summarise the position as at the end of December 2021. And just to remind the committee, you'll remember that in November, at the November meeting, we approved a revised financial plan, having got confirmation of the funding available to the CCG for the last 6 months of the financial year. And you'll probably remember that's the third iteration of the financial plan that you've approved covering this financial year. And when we approved that plan, it was to deliver an in-year break-even position, but noting that required a significant amount of savings. At month 9, I'm pleased to report that we have a very small overspend on the budget, even recognising those pressures that were inherent in the plan. And that is after we've used a significant amount of slippage in terms of being able to balance the position. So we are forecasting just a small overspend by the end of the year, but I do want the committee to be clear that that overspend has been brought down by a series of non-recurrent measures. So it's still incumbent on us to identify recurrent savings within the primary care budget. So that's really all I wanted to say about the current financial position. In terms of, it's not included in the paper because information is still coming out, but we are currently in the process of looking at our planning for 2022-23, and that will include planning for our primary care budgets. There's still quite a lot of uncertainty about additional requirements for 2022-23 contracts, so we still need to work through all of that. But I'm hoping that by the time we get to our March meeting, we'll be in a position to present a plan for 2022-23. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Jackie? No? Okay, thank you, Jackie. And I know that it's not been the easiest because of having the budget quite late and in different parts. So well done on all the work, yourself and the team. And yeah, I know we'll get an update before the end of the financial year. So thanks for that. So moving on then to the, we were just asked to consider that paper, by the way. So the next item is the delegated primary care functions and audit reports from Abby. He's going to speak to that, I think.
Thank you very much. So you may remember that as part of our responsibility or requirements under delegation to NHS England, we undertake an annual, or our internal auditors undertake an annual audit of how we discharge our primary care commissioning functions. This year's audit was undertaken in November 2021. And the subject of the audit was our financial arrangements for commissioning primary care services. The full report of the auditors was published in December, and therefore we're bringing that report to you today. You've got a full copy of the report should you wish to read the detail of that, attached as an appendices to this summary. However, I'm extremely pleased to tell you that the opinion of the auditors was that our financial arrangements for primary care commissioning they're fully assured about our financial arrangements for primary care commissioning, and they had and they identified no proposed actions for us to take in relation to those. I think that's testament to the huge amount of work that our primary care finance leads in Jackie's finance team undertake to support primary care and our budgeting arrangements, and it just highlights all the hard work they've done, and also the work they do in conjunction with members of our primary care team as well. It's quite unusual for those of you that don't know to achieve full assurance on an audit. So we're just really thrilled with it, as probably the last audit that will be undertaken in this format as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the audit report? Okay, there isn't any, but well done to all the committee, and particularly to Abby and the team, the CCG, and the outstanding work to get such a good audit report. I think the other point is similar to the annual report, isn't it? That some of the key things that we've learned from this to make sure it's embedded as we go forward in the new structure. So just to make that point. Okay, so the next item then is a digital programme update. So Tom, did you want to speak to this?
Good afternoon, I'm Thomas Cragg. I'm the Deputy Director of IT Development and Improvement at Sheffield CCG. So I'll take the paper as read and just pull out some key points. So we've been, over the past few months, we've had some great performance on the telephone answering in the short time, but we've been failing the primary KPI there, but that was achieved in December. Made some staffing changes and some slight changes to process, but really pleased to say that we've achieved that through December. So we'll keep the team on that one. The second point is just around outbound telephony through MS Teams. So some additional functionality has been delivered from central, allowing GPs and practice staff to make outbound phone calls. That's hopefully alleviating some of the pressures on the phone lines. It's not available. All sites have been registered and they'll come online during the month. So hopefully the majority have now got that functionality. And the last point is just around problem management. So if you look at the report, the major cause of P1s across Sheffield, and in fact across all of the CCGs that we support from BBS IT, is through network connectivity issues. So where the network connectivity drops out for a number of reasons. So we are putting some problem management in place. We do have regular service reviews with RedCentric, our provider, and we're just looking at ways to mitigate that, to give a better service to the practices. But we're happy with our overall service, but we just want to just try and make it even better where we can.
Thank you, Thomas. That's really useful. Are there any questions or comments? No? So I know there's this really, obviously, and we've seen it in the previous report on Shoreham Street, that this is such a key area, especially during the pandemic. So really appreciate the escalation of work and looking at the needs, and I note the out of hours contact, which I'm sure will be appreciated by colleagues. Thank you. So the next items are for noting, but I did want to ask Sandy if she wanted to say something about the planning update, or...
Happy to, Chair. So this paper summarises the planning guidance, the national guidance that was published on Christmas Eve. This paper was presented to governing body in public session last week, and just gives a summary of the requirements from within that national guidance. So this is for 22-23, so as of April, and it is recognised that the assumption of this guidance and the requirements to achieve next year is based on COVID levels returning to low levels in April. So bearing in mind we are currently experiencing some challenging times and still in challenging times due to the pandemic, the guidance is looking at how we can plan to recover from the backlogs and waiting lists that the pandemic has inevitably caused, as well as reduce the health inequalities that also has been precedented for this during the pandemic. So the guidance itself identifies 10 priorities, and as you go through them, it will be recognised that it is work that we are currently doing. It's nothing out of the ordinary, but very much takes into account that we need to recover the services and do what we can to get the services back to the levels pre-COVID. But that is the assumption. We are looking at developing contingency plans if COVID remains with us, as well as in challenging times. So it is a difficult time to plan, but obviously that's what we're doing at the moment. And I will stress that the first priority is looking after our workforce. So really recognising the amount of pressure they've been under over the last couple of years, and regardless of whether or not COVID does go down to low levels in April, that our workforce still definitely needs looking after and strengthening, and very much highlighted as the priority to develop at that point. So they're the 10 priorities. I don't know if Jackie wants to just mention anything in regards to finance.
I think I covered it in terms of, I think specifically around the primary care budgets, the recurrent commitments we're carrying forward, and into particularly around primary care GP contract for 22-23. There's always a lot of detail in terms of the potential financial consequences of that has in the past come fairly late to inform our planning, but whatever we bring forward in March will hopefully take the position as we know it then.
So the plans are being developed, and we will bring back our commissioning intentions that relate to primary care at a future primary care meeting.
Thank you. Gareth, got your hand
Yeah,
up.
just to say thanks, Sandy. I know, think it, I'm a GP in Sheffield, but I'm the LMC representative today. I think we recognise that the LMC, obviously, you got to make do with what's handed to you on a plate, but I feel really the national planning guidance is tone deaf. And I know it's come from above and not from you, and you have to deal with what you're given, but it's like they want everything done, but aren't prepared to fund or pay for anything. And I think it's ridiculous that they think COVID's going to go away in the next financial year. It just isn't. And I think when you hear the government guidance yesterday that you can, step back, take your mask off, do what you like, and they're not even sure when they've been to a party and when they haven't. So I think the whole thing really is ridiculous. And I think on a slight tangent, I think it's quite embarrassing for the people of Sheffield as well, that actually one of our senior council members has been tied up in all this again. So I think there is quite a lot of disharmony and upset on at grassroots level amongst GPs, but also the general public as well. And then you see these sort of planning guidance coming out as well. So they want GPs to continue doing the vaccination program, see more people face to face. Actually, they've offered more appointments in the last 12 months than they did in the 12 months before COVID arrived. I think we appreciate the sentiment that obviously you've got an interest in looking after the workforce, and I feel that's going to be more important than meeting any of these targets, which I don't think are achievable. But that's the end of the rant.
I appreciate your comments, Gareth, actually, because I think these targets or these requirements, I think we need to put a local spin on them in terms of what we're going to implement, what we're going to focus on, and what's priority for Sheffield. And it's working with networks, working with practices, working with yourself to really see what we can do, but actually what is the art of possible whilst recognising what we've been through and what we continue to do. And let me just stress the point that these are the plans for the assumption that COVID is low. Some of us may believe that that's never going to happen, especially in 2 months. So actually, what we'll do is the plans of what we can achieve, where we are at, and work with our practices rather than put a plan together that's completely unrealistic.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Sandy.
I don't know if Zach was next.
Oh, sorry. Just check I'm off mute actually. Zach Murray, Medical Director at the CCG. I think it's just that idea that COVID just switches off and everything gets back to normal. I think it needs a bit of a reality check. So I do worry about the consequences of COVID, which will be for years to come. So it's the consequences for the population. It's, a lot of the mental health issues that we're now seeing within general practice, but also the consequences for frontline workforce. And I think we've got to be careful that we don't get a disconnect from that. So that there are a lot of very damaged people out there who have been busting a gut to manage through COVID because we had to keep going. And that will hit once COVID starts to dissipate, and there will be a need for a recovery period for staff. If you put in the back of that the staffing crisis that the NHS is facing at the moment, which is unprecedented, and the fact that as you start to lose staff from both ends, either people retire early because they're running out of steam, or you're struggling to recruit at the other end. And that's the bit that really scares me at the moment, is that we're struggling to get new people in. Then all you do is create more pressure for the people that are left. So there's nothing in there that you're going to say doesn't make sense, but I just really try and reconnect reality, and we'll try and do it locally. But if we end up with unrealistic targets and we end up with an unrealistic and I would say not value-driven management approach nationally to achieving some of the targets, that will just further demoralise workforce that are really at the end of their tether. And my worry is that will just escalate that loss of staff that we are seeing throughout the NHS at the moment. So, we'll make the most of it. We'll try and make it work locally. We'll work in partnership like we always do. But it does feel a little bit divorced from reality, I've got to say it. And it does concern me that it's the frontline staff that are the ones that bear the brunt when you try to implement things that are unimplementable, if that's a word, or unrealistic. And that is my concern. I'm not sure if there's an awareness nationally about the damage that's been done to some of the frontline staff in particular, in having to really live through a nightmare over the last couple of years. And that's the bit that concerns me.
Chris, you're on mute.
Am I speaking now, or is it?
Yes, Chris, just, yeah.
We've used lots of words of unrealistic and not in touch with any sort of normality. I think most ordinary patients are fully aware of the pressures that the NHS have had. The only problem is that when you're feeling poorly, you actually want help, and you want help now, which is a different. It's a problem. But I do hope Sheffield manages to have some sort of realistic view of these plans, and are allowed with other areas to interpret them with some sort of understanding of the situation we're in. And I think patients will understand that. I worry a little bit that now you're going into a larger organization, how much influence you're going to have, you're going to be able to have, and how much pressure is going to come from on top to make you do these things, where I see our NHS staff becoming a shrunken, shrivel, I don't know what. And I just hope that you are able to be realistic about all of this.
Thanks, Trish. Amir?
Yeah, just briefly, a couple of reflections really, Chris. I mean, echoing everything that Gareth and Zach and Trish have said. I'm, at the moment, a little optimistic because I've not seen so much positive engagement between the various strands, i.e. the LMC, frontline general practice, the CCG, our primary care team, develop in a positive way over the last 12 to 18 months. And I would hope that we can keep, as I said earlier, I would hope that we can keep a lot of these relationships and functions going. Just to put a little bit of reality check on this and the nuance and complexity of all this, again, going back to Zach's point, we've gone a year without a nurse because we can't recruit. We couldn't recruit, we've gone 3 months without receptionists. And on Monday, we had more clinical than reception staff. So it was the doctors that were making the tea for the poor receptionists because of the sickness. So it's these problems, you know, we tend to think, oh, staff, it's just doctors and nurses. But there's a huge kind of variability in all this, and it's all nuanced. And it's a bit like COVID because it tends to come in waves. So you'll get a certain group of people off, and then because of the complex nature in which we work and because everything is so interconnected, going down from 9 to 4 staff, we just barely made it in trying to answer the phones and the queries and etc. So these aren't just abstract ideas. These are actually just happening day in, day out. And I think we need to bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amir. And I understand and share the comments and concerns, and also, you know, some of the positives of what we have done to move forward with this. So thanks, Sandy, for that update. And so we'll move on to the next item, which is about any other report. So there isn't any, is there, Abby, that we've got noting on here? So in terms of the other items are about any risk to report up to audit. And I was going to say no, none that we haven't reported before, but I don't know if we have reported this risk of, well, about impact of COVID, future COVID and impact of COVID. People have talked about mental health, the impact on the staff. There's long COVID as well. And so I think it's come through in terms of thinking about expectations and planning. So it's come through a bit differently, I think. So if we've got a plan, which I know you're going to start from where we are, Sandy, not where the top down are telling us we've got to start from, but then not taking account of the risk is not good because you can't put the mitigations in place to achieve. So Mark, you wanted to say something.
One of the things that struck me as I've read the Primary Care Commissioning Committee papers over a period of years now, is we never get any data which shows the number of requests for mergers that have come up to Primary Care Commissioning Committee and also through Speak. And I just wonder, I mean, this is just in terms of risk management. The impression I have is that the rate has sort of slowly chugged up over the last 7 years. And I just think as a clinical commissioning group, and thinking partly about our legacy, isn't this something that we could just look at the rate of those applications that are coming through, and whether we, as a city, we should be keeping an eye on that?
So are you thinking of it in terms of a risk or in terms of other implications?
Well, I think it's something that feeds, I mean, you could say, well, there isn't a risk there because the services continue, but I just think it should be part of, if we're looking at taking a strategic approach with regard to commissioning, that is one of the things that indicates that there's something happening. So I know this comes a bit left field, Chris, but I just feel that this is something that either now or in the new world we should be keeping an eye on, and data should be presented each year to the CCG, not just about what happened in that year, but how this compares to previous years as the custodian of primary care in the city.
So I know, Jackie, you've got your hand up, but Abby, can we get that information so we can?
Yeah, we report to PCCC through Primary Care Update report on mergers, so we can provide a report on trends in terms of mergers, plus any other issues that affect practices such as practice closures or and so on, so that PCCC can see those trends and what's happening as an overview. We could certainly put that in the next update report, Mark. I think it is complex, as you've already observed, but because it assumes that you are starting from an ideal position with your primary care services, and actually I think we probably acknowledge that we may, in terms of, just looked at in terms of, I'm not talking about distribution or access, I'm talking about just pure numbers of practices for head of population. We may, we may well have too many practices, and we also probably have a number of small single-handed practices that aren't, regardless of COVID or any other pressures, aren't ideally sized, or in terms of succession planning, we wouldn't necessarily want to encourage them not to merge. It may be good both for their resilience, their patients, and their succession planning. So I think it is complicated, but very happy to bring that and start that conversation, because I think it is an important conversation.
Okay, thank you, Abby. That's really useful. Jackie?
I suppose one of the risks that I've heard through this meeting has been about potential dilution of the Sheffield primary care voice in a new organisation, and loss of some of the good things that we value. So I think that's possibly something. We've noticed some mitigations as well, but it might be something that you want to note as an escalation of risk.
Yes, I agree, and I kind of was feeling around that area because it's through various, it's kind of run through various discussions, hasn't it? And it would be useful to look at it. I think the other message, well, I've put it, they're slightly different, aren't they? There's the learning, and then there's the other one was about risk of COVID, but the governing body message was particularly about taking forward that learning and the messages from here about the keenness through things like the audit report and the annual report and our self-assessment to actually that learning to carry it forward. So it's both a risk, but a key message as well, that we want to do that and see the governing body support how that can happen through the ICS. So there's two things. Ronnie, I don't know if I've been that clear for you. There was the point that Jackie made in terms of how we take this forward and the risk of not doing in the new structure, to go through the audit, and then the COVID situation and various issues in relation to the impact of COVID. Okay, so is there any other business? Oh, sorry, Abby, I missed your hand then. You got your hand?
Yes, I don't know. I was just going to say, Chris, and we may feel it's sort of covered in the other things, whether just listening to some of the concern that was voiced around the planning requirements and their potential impact, or the things that are missed in terms of primary care planning and our ability to take forward some of that work in relation to COVID. Is that worth escalating?
Yes. Yeah, probably I meant to say that, but I didn't articulate it very well.
I see what you mean. Yes, my
yes. No, it's fine. I was kind of trying to place it, but yeah, it's both the risk of long COVID and the impact on services. But then the particular thing is our planning expectations and the risk of not being allowed to take it into account, if you like, although we are going to do that, because in Sheffield, we don't want plans that are just written down and can't realistically happen. So yeah, definitely. And I think I wasn't very clear when I was trying to say that earlier. So thank you for that. Okay, is there any other business? Thank you, and thanks for anybody joining in and watching the work of the committee. Thanks for everybody's thoughtful input today. So Emma, if we can close the video.
I could do that, Chris.
Thank you. Is that done?